Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us. You guys have been requesting this one for a while.
I know, I've been looking forward to this one.
This is the story of Elizabeth Holmes.
And Theranos.
So this is one of those stories where a lot of our listeners probably already know the basics.
Yeah, for sure.
But we're gonna go deeper than that.
Absolutely.
And we've got all this research that you guys have sent us, articles, books, all kinds of stuff about Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos.
Yeah.
And how this, incredible success story, kind of a huge crash.
Yeah, how did she achieve so much and then lose it all?
Yeah, and so fast.
Yeah, it's a wild ride for sure.
It really is.
I mean, Theranos wasn't just another startup. It became this, phenomenon.
It really did.
Elizabeth Holmes was like a cultural icon, a symbol of,
Yeah.
disruption and innovation.
Yeah, but then the whole thing just blew up.
It all came crashing down.
So how did she pull it off? I mean, this wasn't some tiny little company. She convinced some of the most powerful people in the world to get behind her.
That's right. That's right. Some really big names.
Yeah, so let's go back to the beginning. Let's look at her early life.
Okay, so even as a kid, she was super ambitious, like crazy ambitious.
I mean, she was selling C++ compilers to Chinese universities while she was still in high school.
While she was in high school. Yeah, not your average teenager.
No, not at all. And I think her family background might give us some clues about where that drive came from.
Yeah, potentially.
So her great-great-great-uncle was Julius Fleischmann, the Fleischmann's yeast guy.
Oh, wow. Yeah, household name, a real legacy of success in business.
And then you've got her dad, who had connections to Enron.
Right, Enron, the ultimate example of corporate scandal.
Yeah, I mean, it makes you wonder if growing up with these two kind of contrasting examples maybe shaped her view of risk and reward.
Yeah, did she learn that you have to push the limits to be really successful, even if it means bending the rules?
It's an interesting thought, right? Because she saw both sides of it. She saw the potential rewards, and she saw the potential consequences.
Exactly, the good and the bad.
And then, of course, she drops out of Stanford at 19 to start Theranos.
19 years old. That's bold.
Yeah, that's when the legend really starts.
Yeah.
I mean, she had this revolutionary idea.
Right, blood tests with just a finger prick.
No more giant needles.
Oh,
no more waiting weeks for results.
She wanted to make healthcare accessible and affordable for everyone.
It was a brilliant idea.
Yeah.
I mean, who actually likes getting their blood drawn?
Nobody likes needles.
But the thing is, the technology just wasn't there yet.
That's the catch, right? Even her own professor at Stanford, Phyllis Gardner, told her straight up, it can't be done.
Like it's scientifically impossible.
The science just wasn't there to support what she was claiming.
But Holmes didn't let that stop her.
Nope. She was determined. She had this unwavering belief in her vision, and she was a very, very persuasive person.
Yeah, and that's what's so amazing. She raised hundreds of millions of dollars from investors.
From some big names, too, like Rupert Murdoch, Larry Ellison.
Her board of directors was like a who's who of power players. George Shultz, Henry Kissinger, James Mattis. It's crazy.
That's a lot of clout.
It is, and it's like, how did she convince all these super successful people to buy into her vision?
I think part of it was her charisma.
Yeah.
She had this Steve Jobs kind of aura about her.
Yeah, the black turtlenecks, the deep voice, the confidence.
She was a master storyteller.
And the media loved her.
They ate it up.
She was on magazine covers, giving TED Talks, and everyone was calling her the next Steve Jobs, the youngest self-made female billionaire.
The hype was unreal.
And that hype led to real partnerships.
Like the deal with Walgreens.
They set up Theranos wellness centers in Walgreens stores all across the country.
It seemed like they were about to completely change healthcare.
But there were problems. Like beneath the surface, there were these cracks starting to show.
Yeah, things weren't quite as they seemed.
The technology wasn't working like they promised, and the tests were giving inaccurate results. Yeah, and that's where things get really interesting.
We're going to find out how this whole house of cards started to fall apart and what the consequences were.
Stay tuned for part 2 of our deep dive into Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos. Okay, so we're back, and we're talking about Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos and how this amazing success story went so wrong.
Yeah, right.
So last time we talked about how she had this incredible vision and how she managed to convince all these powerful people to invest in her company.
Right, she was a master at selling her idea.
But as we know, it all came crashing down.
Yeah, the cracks started to show.
So how did that happen? How did this house of cards start to fall apart?
Well, that's where John Carey comes into the picture. He was a reporter for the Wall Street Journal, and he started investigating Theranos.
Yeah, you guys sent us a bunch of his articles.
Yeah, they're pretty incredible.
They're really eye-opening. He talked to former employees, whistleblowers, who are like, Something's not right here.
Yeah, people who were risking their careers to tell the truth.
And what they revealed was shocking.
I mean, the Theranos devices, they weren't working like they were supposed to.
Yeah, they were giving inaccurate test results.
Which could have put patients at risk.
Potentially really dangerous.
And it gets worse because the company was allegedly trying to cover it all up.
It's like actively hiding the truth.
Yeah, using all sorts of shady tactics.
It's mind-boggling, isn't it? You've got this company valued at billions of dollars, and it's all based on a lie.
Essentially smoke and mirrors.
But how did it go on for so long?
Why didn't anyone catch them sooner?
Well, Holmes was very good at controlling the story.
Yeah.
She was super secretive, and she had this team of lawyers ready to pounce on anyone who questioned her.
Like attack dogs.
Pretty much.
And, I mean, remember David Boies?
Oh, yeah.
The famous lawyer who represented Al Gore?
Yeah, in the 2000 election recount.
He was on Theranos' legal team.
Wow.
And he was known for being aggressive, like really aggressive.
So people were scared to say anything.
Yeah, I bet.
But Kerry Rue didn't back down. No. He kept digging, and eventually his reporting led to investigations by the FDA and the SEC.
The feds got involved.
And that's when it all started to unravel.
The house of cards came tumbling down.
The FDA found all these problems with Theranos' lab practices, and the SEC accused Holmes and her business partner, Sunny Balwani, of massive fraud.
It all imploded.
The company went bankrupt. Investors lost millions, and Holmes faced criminal charges.
Talk about a fall from grace.
It's crazy how quickly it all happened.
But the story isn't over yet.
Right.
The trial itself was just as fascinating as the rise and fall of Theranos.
Okay, so let's talk about the trial.
All right.
It was a media circus. Everyone was watching to see what would happen.
Yeah, would she be held accountable?
So what did the prosecution have on her?
They had a lot of evidence that she had knowingly misled investors and patients about her technology.
And how did she defend herself?
Well, that's interesting. She admitted to some mistakes.
Okay.
But she said she never intended to defraud anyone.
So not intentional.
Right. And she also put a lot of the blame on Sunny Balwani, her ex-boyfriend, and the COO of Theranos.
Wait, I thought they were partners in all of this.
They were.
But now she's saying it was his fault.
That was her defense, basically. She claimed that he was controlling and abusive.
Like he manipulated her.
Yeah, she said he was the one who made the bad decisions.
So she was trying to paint herself as the victim.
It was a risky strategy.
But I guess it made people question what was really going on in their relationship.
Right. Who was really calling the shots?
Yeah. So the jury had to sift through all of that, the evidence, the testimonies, all these different versions of the story.
It must have been a really tough decision.
And they deliberated for a long time.
7 days.
Wow.
Before they finally reached a verdict.
And what was the verdict?
Guilty.
On all counts.
On 4 counts of fraud and conspiracy.
So they didn't believe her story.
Nope. The jury held her accountable for her actions.
Wow.
It was a big win for the prosecution and a huge moment for Silicon Valley.
Yeah, it sent a message that you can't get away with this kind of deception.
Exactly, no matter how charming or connected you are.
So even with all her charisma and her powerful friends and her attempts to blame someone else, she couldn't escape the consequences.
Nope. The truth caught up with her.
It's a crazy story, right? Filled with twists and turns, betrayals and lies.
Definitely.
But there are still some questions to answer.
Like what happened to Elizabeth Holmes after the trial?
And what are the bigger lessons we can learn from all of this?
Yeah, how can we prevent something like this from happening again?
We'll explore all of that in the final part of our deep dive into Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos. Welcome back to Deep Dive Podcast. So we've spent the last 2 parts of this deep dive really digging into the story of Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos.
Yeah, a fascinating and ultimately tragic story.
And you know, from that incredible rise to that shocking fall from grace.
A real cautionary tale.
It is. And now we want to kind of shift gears a little bit and talk about what we can all learn from this.
Yeah, what are the bigger takeaways here?
You know, you guys have sent in some really thought-provoking articles and think pieces that kind of get at the heart of those bigger questions.
Yeah, I think this case goes way beyond just one company or one person. It's a story that has implications for all of us, especially in a world that's so obsessed with, innovation and disruption.
Right. So what are those key takeaways? What can we as individuals learn from the Theranos saga?
Well, I think the first and most important one is that we can't just blindly trust authority.
even when it seems really legit.
Right, even if someone has impressive credentials or connections.
Like Holmes had former secretaries of state, military leaders, business titans on her board.
Yeah, all those big names, and even they were misled.
It's almost like the bigger the name, the easier it is to get swept up on the hype.
Yeah, and the media definitely played a role in that, too.
Yeah, for sure.
For years, Holmes was portrayed as this visionary genius.
And it's a good reminder that we need to be critical consumers of information.
Absolutely, especially when it comes from sources that might have a vested interest in promoting a certain narrative.
So don't just believe everything you read.
Right. Do your own research.
Check your sources.
Think critically.
What else?
Another big takeaway is the importance of due diligence. Investors poured millions, even billions into Theranos without really understanding the technology or verifying the company's claims.
But these were sophisticated investors, venture capitalists, people who do this for a living.
I know it's hard to believe, but it seems like many of them were blinded by the potential of this breakthrough in healthcare.
That FOMO, fear of missing out.
Yeah, nobody wanted to be left behind.
It's like that old saying, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Exactly.
But how do you apply that in the real world, where there's so much information out there, everyone's claiming to have the next big thing?
It's not easy, but there are some things you can do.
Like what?
First of all, be skeptical. Don't just accept claims at face value. Dig deeper. Ask questions. Look for evidence to support those claims.
And what if you're not a scientist or an engineer? How do you even know what questions to ask?
That's where it's important to seek out diverse perspectives.
Okay.
Talk to experts in different fields, read analyses from different sources, and don't be afraid to challenge the conventional wisdom.
Just basically be informed, stay curious, and don't be afraid to ask tough questions.
Exactly. And remember, it's okay to be wrong. We all make mistakes, but it's what we learn from those mistakes that matters.
So true. The Theranos story is a really powerful reminder that even the most brilliant ideas can be corrupted.
By greed, by a lack of integrity.
And that no matter how successful someone might seem, they're still accountable for their actions.
Absolutely, actions have consequences.
It's a story that will continue to be studied and debated for years to come.
For sure.
And hopefully it'll serve as a cautionary tale, encouraging all of us to be more discerning, more critical, more responsible.
Yeah, in our pursuit of progress.
Well, that's it for our deep dive into the rise and fall of Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos.
That was a wild one.
It really was. We hope you guys found it informative and maybe even inspiring.
Yeah, go out there and ask some tough questions.
Until next time, keep diving deep.